for, I guess it's going on 11 years now. Excuse me. So remember, as always, we want to remind you, don't be afraid to fail. Be afraid not to try, because not trying is guaranteed failure, right? And so many people are, and we cover this specifically in one of the beginning leadership courses that we had, that you got to really kind of get to love failure, not for the final act of what failure could be. It's just temporary, right? It's something that happens. It's not a person. And so, again, over here on the Asian Pacific side, I'm back in Bangkok for a couple more days. Going to have a pretty big meeting here in a few days with quite a few people. And so as we begin our crusade, if you will, over on this side of the world, very excited to see what's going on in Africa, what's going on in South America, of course, the amazing things that have already happened in the United States of America, and of course Canada, which is much smaller than the United States, obviously, by population, by geography. They have just done an outstanding job, and that's because of the amazing leadership. So let's begin this week's course, if you will. And, if you've been around a while, you probably know the answer. If you don't, then, kind of strap in. So one of the cliches in the industry, and there's a reason why cliches are started, it's the speed of the leader. And what is the speed of the leader, right? Well, it is the speed of the team. And after almost 3 decades, I can tell you, there's no massive organization that's built without leadership, right? And that's what this course every week is about, is leadership. If you want to make a lot of money, if you want to be successful, if you want your time freedom, right, all the things that go along with success, you eventually have to step up and become a leader. Because the following has to have somebody to guide them. That's just the way it is. And if you're a shepherd, or if you're in professional sports, if you're in the military like I was, there's always a leader dictating the pace of what the troops, if you will, have to go through to win whatever the prize is. Is it a trophy? Is it a medal? Is it a check? Is it your life, right? That was the one thing I learned at a very young age when I joined the Marine Corps. I was just 17, right? I didn't know nothing about nothing. Really never left my home state except to go on vacation a couple of times with my parents. I didn't know anything about the world and what successful people were all about. So, after getting a very close haircut, if you will, and people screaming at you, the people that were training me had come out of a very nasty war. And so they had learned life and death scenarios. And so the leadership that I got was, in my opinion, just some of the best you could ever get, no matter what you're going to do, because I carry it with me to this day. And that was like 38 years ago. Okay, so one of the things you want to, one of the things you want to make sure you're doing is giving your team a system to follow. Now, you don't have to follow exactly what I'm going to go through today, but you need to set up a system. And so my first coach in the industry was somebody that went on to have massive success. I met him when he made his first $1 million in the industry. And remember, this is going back almost 30 years. I worked with him when he made about $8 million, and then he went on to just do amazing things and become #1 on the Inc. 500 list with just a crazy amount of growth. It was like 27,000% growth. And some of the training that I received at that time, really never needed to be altered. So he had a very simple system to get people started. Now, you might know the system, but are you teaching the system? And like I said, you need to have systems in place, because a leader, especially in home-based business and with iPro Network, as you know, we've already grown to over 300,000 ISAs, and it hasn't even been a year and a half. So the first one is to pay attention, because remember, duplication is the key to becoming successful. And not just duplication in this industry, duplication in all things. McDonald's doesn't make the best hamburger, but Ray Kroc learned how to take a system, right, back then, which wasn't popular. It was almost like unheard of. fast food, if you will. Drive-thrus were all the craze back in the day, and he learned to mass produce that. So today, McDonald's is obviously the number one producer of hamburgers, and at the same time, they are the most, how should we say, company that's set up with the most elite real estate in the world, right? Because that's what really Ray Kroc was all about, was real estate more than burgers. If you haven't seen the movie, I suggest you go see that. It came out just like a year or two ago. I can't remember the name. Second step, though, for your people is remember, there's always plenty of videos, webinars, conference calls, websites, PowerPoints. You know, most people have the wrong attitude. When they get started, they think they have to be the leader. They have to memorize all the information, know all the facts, and that's not the most important thing for them. The most important thing for them, and Zig Ziglar used to say it best, he says, it's your attitude that you need to focus on, not your aptitude. I remember when I started, I heard all this stuff, I had to go look up what aptitude was. Tells you how bright I was back in the day. Your attitude, and you have to teach your people, their attitude is far more important than any fact or figure they can carry around or regurgitate or throw up on their prospects, right? Because remember, facts tell. That does not get people off the dime, right? To be a walking, talking encyclopedia, if you will. There's already Google, right? You don't need to be that kind of person, but you need to have stories, because stories is what motivates and it really sells. So we say facts tell, stories sell. So remember, if they're paying attention to a duplicating system and then they're excited at the same time. Now remember, you have to have all three of these going on in your new ISA's head, right? All three things have to be happening simultaneously. And then they need to understand that quitting is not an option, right? If they're going to quit, I always used to tell people, if you're going to quit, just do it now. Don't put your order in, right? The only way to fail in this business is to quit. And remember, quitters never win and winners never finish. You want to teach them to set short and long-term goals. Right from the beginning, don't go out and, I'll give it a try, right? We'll give it the old college try. No, in business, everything is determined by short and long-term goals. And if you can get your people successful right out of the gate, new people, especially when they're very enthusiastic, they want to go out and say silly stuff like, I'm going to put 50 people in a room. I'm going to put 100 people in a room. No, you're not. If you're brand new, chances are they're going to go out and say all the wrong things. They're going to get really down and really depressed when they invited 20 people to show up to a presentation and maybe one person shows up, right? Because he heard it from someone else, right? Not from the individual. So instead of concentrating on the one person that shows up, right, they get massively depressed and they start calling the other 19 people right before the meeting. Not a good way to start your business. Remember, pay attention, get excited, and then never give up. 3 simple principles. They've never really changed. You can apply them to anything, right? So remember, duplication is the key. Attitude is far superior or more important than their aptitude and how much information they know, and then they should have a winner's attitude. Now, here is a snapshot of what you want to teach your people. Now, this is not to replace what our Vice President, Mr. Maurice Katz, is setting up in the iPro University and, all the cool apps and all the different things. This is not to replace that. This is just give you a snapshot of start to finish of what happens when someone's brand new, right? This is called network marketing. It's not called network sales and a gazillion other names people want to spin. It's network marketing. And so what is that? Well, remember, you got to teach your people what are the different ways they can market. Back in the day, we used to get a phone script, right? Somebody used to hand us a piece of paper and we could only make a telephone call or go knock on somebody's door. Those were the 2 ways that you could market back in the day, right? And then fax machines happened and, it's ridiculous how many different ways you can get the story out. So remember, phone calls, emails, Facebook, social media, there's meetings, there's conference calls, there's websites, there's webinars, and then, of course, there's the good old sit down. There's so many different ways to market your business. But as a leader, are you just expecting people to be like a genius overnight, right? Remember, they got fear and enthusiasm coursing through their veins. They need to know, how can I through compliance, be successful at getting the message out. So you don't want to just throw them out there and possibly get them in trouble because they're going to just start typing stuff on Facebook that's not compliant and then get like a letter or an email from the legal department. And at the same time, you don't want them to go home and only do one way of marketing. You want to teach them all the different ways of marketing. Now, here's where the expectations typically are not met, is because they confuse the next topic, if you will. And that is the people they know, right? Back in the day, we were taught to make a list of 100 people you know, and those are your prospects. And, there's 5 in 100. And the reality is they're suspects. They're not prospects. They're just names. They're just phone numbers. There's a cool book called The Little Red Book of Selling, and it talks about this. And he says, well, out of the 100 people that you're supposed to call, how many of them really want you to call them? The list gets a lot shorter. So once they go through some preliminary questions that you need to teach them, right? Hey, are you interested in a home-based business? Hey, if I could show you a way, and fill in the blank. And there's many different questions that you can teach your people to say. Then if a person is positive in their response, now you have a prospect. So remember now, we've gone from teaching your new people the different ways that they can market their business to understand the difference between a suspect and a prospect, because you don't want, as a leader, all your people to throw suspects at you. It's a waste of your time and the person's. The suspects, that is. And then, of course, there's the expert or leader. Now, don't let the title of expert go to your head, right? That's the problem a lot of men have. Women are much more superior at this. Now, what the new ISA needs to do is obviously edify the expert. And we're going to be talking about this more in depth in just a second. So just remember that. The new ISA's job is not to master all the facts and figures and the things that go along with all that iPro Networking has to offer, because it can be incredibly complicated considering we've got trading going on, we've got the whole e-commerce learning, we've got the whole crypto world. That can be overwhelming to a new ISA, but they can always learn how to do edification right out of the gate. And so if done properly, the new ISA, has the prospect meeting the expert where the respect has already been built. And then now we begin, the lesson, if you will, about then how do you mass duplicate this? So there's a little bit of psychology, and this isn't really as much leadership as it is a brand new person, but you need to know what they're going through, right? So one of the first things that I was taught after the pay attention, get excited, and don't quit was to get locked in. And he said, everybody has the same questions. Now, remember, this is a gentleman who smashed records way back in the day when there wasn't all this technology and had immediate growth. And of course, I spent 13 years of my life with someone who was actually the world record holder, paying the most money to the most people in the shortest period of time. And really, in my opinion, the difference was the compensation. Strategies were completely different. I believe if my first mentor had that original the compensation that the world record holder had, he probably would have beat him at his own game. So getting locked in, 3 questions. They come up every single day, every single time people go into a new quadrant. What do I mean by that? Well, we'll get into that, but let's talk about the questions. When people are listening to people, giving them a presentation, what's really going on in their head is they're wanting to know, is this simple or is it going to be hard? Does it actually work? And can I do it? Those are the only 3 questions that are important to the prospect. Now, you might want to be dazzling with the crypto world and how big the e-commerce world is becoming and who's the richest man in the world and how iPro Network is, this amazing opportunity. But what they really are concerned about is it simple? Does it work? And can I pull it off? That's what they really want to know. So if you stop regurgitating facts and stop focusing on your enthusiasm and start concentrating on the other individual's emotions. We say emanations, right? What are they projecting back to you? And so there's a cycle that every single person goes through, and you all have to go through them. There's no easy way out, and you can't start in the middle or at the end. You have to start on square one. right? So in the cycle of success, the first thing is the product. Now, what is the product to you? Well, you're a leader. So, there's two different perceptions of a product, right? The first definition of a product is what you see as a commodity, right? If we were talking about McDonald's, remember the people that work at McDonald's in the actual stores, right, that are owned by people that own a franchise, they think the product is shakes, fries, and burgers, right, and all the other things. They think the commodity is the product. The gentleman who bought the franchise understands that his business itself is the product, and he has to take care of his workers as well as the customers. But there's a perception beyond that, and that is the McDonald's Corporation. There's somebody who sold the franchise to the franchisee person who bought it, and they see the product as selling the store. And then there's the all important corporation who's really in the real estate business. So, as a leader, are you still just viewing the product as the commodities we offer? Or are you really starting to understand the product is the business model itself? But to a new person, they can't get that far deep into the program. The phone keeps going off. I apologize. Okay, we're on. Okay, so a new person is going to look at the commodity. Now, remember, they're looking at this and saying, well, is it simple? Does it work? Can I do it? Like we take the eTrader. Well, is that simple? Well, it's software. If you've got a simple way of teaching people, which the company has videos, there's a simple way of breaking it down so they can truly understand the simplicity of once they set up their account, the software is doing the hard part, right? Which is working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, looking for the trades to make you money. And does it work? Well, obviously it works, but if they're brand new, you got to throw some stories at them, some testimonials, and then and only then they say, you know what, I think I could do that. Now that's that one, right? We can go back into the e-learning products that we have. And again, are they simple? Well, beyond the typical videos and text information they can read, the company's gone one step farther to create boot camp programs, walking people through each step of the way so they can get their stores open and start making money online. But again, they want to know, is it simple? Does it work? And can I do it? And remember, we're just in the product phase. Now, if we can get through that phase, right, which is a psychological barrier, then we get into the customer aspect. And I still, to this date, am flabbergasted that if, we have an app that shows people how to shop and earn free rewards, right, from our Pro Currency program, our Pro Rewards, and if they shop already online, they obviously won't use the app if no one ever gave it to them. Now remember, it's free to use, free to download. So it's a free way of getting an incentive of doing what they're already doing, which is not changing a behavior pattern. In other words, you're not trying to get somebody to go from, say, Target to Walmart, right? You're not trying to change the behavior of what they're brand loyal to. We've got over 4,500 stores. So you want to teach them, okay, if you already shop here, look, here's your store. When you shop here, here's what you get back as an incentive. Right? And then that's a great way to break the ice. And then, of course, there's the recruiting phase. Now, what most people, in my humble opinion, the mistake they make is they skip the product, they skip the customer aspect, and they go right in to start recruiting people because they want to make money. Remember, that's what they want to do, right? If you get people sold on the products first, and then you show them that there's value of customers coming to the iPro Network organization, right? Even as just a customer, recruiting becomes so much simpler. The stories are completely different with both the product and the customer barrier broken versus just sitting down with somebody cold and trying to get them involved because of, you fill in the blank what you're excited about. And then, of course, the final psychological barrier is when you get past the recruiting and find out that it's not hard, it does work, and they can do it. Then they get into the teach phase. Now, a lot of people just want to jump in and just become a teacher right out of the gate. We call those people starfishes, right? They want all the glory, they want all the recognition and the appreciation, but they haven't made any money, right? And eventually they get called out. So in the teach part, and remember, this is a binary hybrid. So, the beauty of this is you get one person on the left that wants to go crazy, you get one person on the right, and you don't have to recruit them. And you've got two teams. You can have explosive momentum and have very large income producing weeks, if you will, for many weeks, many months, and even years to come. So remember, you got to break through the barriers one at a time. You can't just jump in and go from product to teaching. Remember, you got to go through the product barrier, the customer barrier, recruiting barrier, and the teaching barrier. So remember, duplication is the key. And a lot of people, they just want it now. And that's not the way you build any type of successful company where there's people involved, right? There has to be relationships that are established. There has to be edification so people know the chain of command. People need to understand that the company is real. And the only way they can do that is by meeting the different leaders that make up the organization, because every company is made up of people, right? Any successful company in today's society, unless you're, somebody that, like what we teach, is you just have an online store, they buy a product and they walk away a happy customer. And the networking organization, if you want to build a successful team, then eventually over time, they have to meet the different leaders. And then the other bigger leaders will assess, right, their decision based on the different people they've met, the stories they've heard, the documentation they've seen, and then is it right for them? Okay, so this is really the topic for today, and we're coming to the end of this, so I don't want to be too long and beat a dead horse, but this is the secret to duplication. This is the secret, and it's not really a secret, right? But you won't find it, the lesson, anywhere but within leadership, teaching it within the industry itself. And the secret to duplication, obviously, is edification. Now, remember, we said new ISAs go out there and they, kick the tires, look under the hood, right? They've done, whatever, email, social media, you name it. And they found people. The problem is a lot of times they only have suspects. They haven't developed a relationship with the prospect because they're going after a cold market. Only warm market really engages and stays, right? Hot market can either light you up or light you on fire. Remember, a hot market is your mom, your dad, your brother, your sister, somebody incredibly close that knows you way too well, more than you want them to know you. They know your successes. They know your failures. They're typically family, and they either completely support you or they just want to crush you, right, under their thumb. And that's just the way it goes. Warm market are people that you have a relationship with. Might not be best buds, but you know each other and feel safe. So if they came knocking on your door one day, you wouldn't freak out. You would actually open the door and invite them in without too much of a discussion. And a cold market's something that, obviously there's zero trust in a cold market because it's strangers meeting strangers. Unless you're a little crazy and a stranger knocks on your door and you let them in your house immediately, I don't think that's a wise move. So new ISAs, remember, new ISAs have prospects. There's got to be some trust somewhere in the relationship. Now the expert comes in only after the new ISA has established respect. Now, I cannot harp on this enough, ladies and gentlemen, that if you're out there trying to build a business and you're not given the respect to the leadership that is trying to support you, you're only hurting your own business. Because remember, it's not a game, but I'm just going to say it for lack of a better word. This is how the game is played. Notice there's three people in this equation. Now, there could be more, but typically this is what it comes down to. New people have a relationship with somebody. They trust them. But typically when they trust people, they did not necessarily listen to them as far as making decisions. They'll say, well, I'll show up. I'll get on the phone call. I'll get on the webinar. But they're not going to make the decision solely based on what their friend is saying. They want to hear some documentation. They want to hear it from a quote-unquote expert. And when that expert has been edified properly, the job is so much simpler. Over the years, when this is done successfully, at least I can only speak for myself in this in this equation, my closing percentages were somewhere in the 80-85 percentile, where typical sales numbers, in typical sales where salespeople are dealing with strangers, they have like a 5% closing. And that's why I love the home-based business industry, because when it's done correctly, there's nothing better. But when it's not done correctly, there's nothing worse. Right? You got to take the good with the bad. So remember, it's teamwork. You combine the trust and the respect, and you got to pick a side. You can't be both. You can't be the trust and then be the respect at the same time. You have to have two different parties establishing those parameters, if you will. And then what does the prospect see? They will see, wow, this is a company that has a lot of synergy. This is a company that has a lot of harmony. I like this. I feel good about it, right? Because all their senses are being played to, if you will, right? By the warm, welcoming everybody gives each other, the respect people have for one another, and that people want to belong to those type of organizations. So remember, teamwork here is the key. Okay, again, this part is not to overtake the company's training, but I want to establish there is a 48-hour kind of clock, if you will, when people sign up. And I don't care what the company's selling, I don't care what they're doing, there's a behavioral pattern. If nothing happens in the first 48 hours, if you haven't put them through any kind of training in the first 48 hours, if you've not established a webinar, if you've not sent them a video, if you haven't done anything as a leader in the first 48 hours, you're giving them permission to do nothing for the rest of their time in the business until they go away. I'm not here to be mean or talk down to anybody, but the behavior pattern is set either way. If you're a parent and you've got kids, if you don't set parameters, right, by the time they're 4 years old, it's over, right? I don't care what happens after that, their behavior pattern is set. Excuse me. And so whatever the rest of their life's going to look like is typically determined in those first 4 years. Well, you get 48 hours to establish these parameters. So here's just some guidelines, right? This is just being general because this is a leadership training. Is you want to set it up to make sure they're watching all the videos and familiarize themselves with the virtual back office. Nothing will scare somebody away more than not showing them the simplicity of a home-based business. If you're like me and you've owned real businesses, and when I say real businesses, I mean the painful ones, where you have employees and you pay salaries and you've got overhead and you've got a lease and you've got to buy furniture and you've got all kinds of bills that you have to pay and all the things that go along with city compliances and licenses and all those things. That's painful. That's expensive. That's a massive commitment. And typically in those businesses, if you fail, it breaks you. Well, this is a virtual business, the nothing to bite you, right? You've got a $50 annual fee, and it sets you up. But the psychological barrier is still there until they break through and they see that it's simple, they see that it works, and they know they can do it. So you want to make sure that if you're not giving some type of a class or setting up a system to teach people the simplicity of their business, and we always say, inspect what you expect. Then you want to teach your people, make a list of contacts. Now remember, these are suspects. And so the suspects should be broken into two groups. The ones that, you're not sure of, hey, I'd like, send, it could be an email, it could be a text message, it could be a phone call. Yeah, I want to send you a free app to try out and tell me what you think, right? That's to get people in the customer. And that's just to kind of plant a seed, if you will, by showing them how they can shop and earn our pro rewards on our amazing app. And then the next group, obviously, are the people that you want to become part of the organization. Now, I know most people want every single person to be part of their team. And again, that's what you want. And I've made money time and time again by getting people just to participate as a customer. I often tell the story of a gentleman I knew back in the day, I think it was 1993, and he pretty much threw me out of his office on his head when I showed him the business opportunity. And of course, he was my friend, and so we had, harsh words in a playful gesture with one another, but he let me have him as a customer. Right? He did that because it was free. And I asked for 3 referrals because I know if you don't ask, you don't get. And so he gave me the 3 referrals. He started to call them. I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, I'm calling your referrals. I'm like, well, this is my first day. I don't know what to say to people I don't know. And he like shook his head and he looked at me like, what is wrong with you? And I just said, look, sign the bottom of the paper. I'll have somebody fill in all the boxes and the blanks. And if need be, we'll call you back. And he was just like, whatever. And he gave me the referrals. Ended up having one of the gentlemen, he saved him like $18,000 off his overhead. He gave me 23 pages of referrals. I called the guy back to tell him thank you for the referrals. I said 2 were no-goes, but one guy saved a lot of money, wants to take you and the wife out to dinner. And he's like, well, what do I get? And I said, nothing, you cheap SOB, pardon my French. And I said, because you didn't want to sign up, I can't pay anything. You get dinner. He said, get your butt over to my office and who do I write this check out to? Because remember, this is back when you didn't do things on the internet because it hadn't been established yet. And anyway, that ended up producing about 5,000 referrals in the first, I think it was like 60 days. It was crazy. And that's what you get out of just at least getting somebody to be a customer, participate. They throw you 1 or 2 names, and then it depends on what you do with those referrals, because I was all over it after that. And every time I had success from a referral, I always make sure I call back the person that gave me the referral and say thank you. And you'd be amazed on how quickly that goes. Okay, so remember the first 48 hours, right? You want to get them to familiarize themselves with the back office. You want to make sure that they're prepping to make sure they're going to go into what? That's right, marketing, get the message out. It's look, get the message out, get the message out, get the message out. In today's society, ladies and gentlemen, with all the different ways of phone calls, emails, Facebook, social media, meetings, conference calls, websites, webinars, sit-downs, are you kidding me? This is the greatest time to be in business, right? With all this technology at your fingertips and 7.5 billion people on the planet, this is the time you want to be in home-based business, I can promise you. Now, based on what I saw 30 years ago, you can hit a home run right out of the gate if you are focused, right? And you get the proper coaching and training from your leadership. Okay, so new job description. This is what you want to teach your people. In the first 90 days, you just want to teach them to recruit and market their business all day long. You as a leader should be doing all the important stuff. You as a leader should be the person recruiting their prospects. Not them. You should be recruiting their prospects. They should be recruiting the people to come meet you in some form or fashion and then market their business consistently. Now I say all day long because that's the way it was sold to me a long time ago. Let's be real about this. If someone puts in 5 to 10 hours a week, they'll be so busy they won't know what to do with all the people that are coming to the table. And remember, you don't want to be leaving your steady source of income until you've proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that the business is going to work for you. I had a mentor who helped build a multi-$100 billion a year insurance company. And he jokingly, he really wasn't joking, but he made it seem that way. He said, wait 6 months. He says, to see if you like us. Right? And then he said, and then this is the joking part, he said, and then to see if we like you. Okay, and then finally here today, because we've gone a couple minutes over what we typically do, it's the after the overview. After the overview is so important, right? It's the meeting after the meeting. And this is when the real decisions are being made. Now, my question is to you as a leader is, are you there? Did you go home and started watching TV? Did you go home and try to recruit new people, right? You had all these people in one way of choice. You don't have to be the person who did the presentation. You don't have to be the person who did the majority of the overview. Were you there, though, right? You said, oh, they weren't my people. That is the most ridiculous way of looking at your business, especially this business, how everybody's tied together. Okay, and so the meeting after the meeting, right? Now, this is not me bragging. This is just showing you, right, by leading by example, like when it is in Nigeria, these were the serious leaders who really could make a difference. Now, remember, this is starting a new continent of people that the continent has over 1 billion. right? The city in which we're in has over 200 million people all by itself. And so again, meeting after the meeting. Now, sometimes it works out, sometimes it don't. You know, and here, obviously, I'm sitting at a table, and I'm probably the least most important person at the table because there's our wonderful president. There's one of our Impact Leadership Council members, Mr. Bishop Stewart, and a couple of prospects. And so, ladies and gentlemen, as we conclude here, remember, we want to recap it here a little bit today, remembering that we never close now, right? As now that iPro Network is obviously all through North America, and penetrating now down into South America. And we've got the presentation materials in many languages. I'll have French here within a couple days. Got the Portuguese that just went out to the leadership, Vietnamese, Chinese, Japanese, Thai, Korean, obviously Spanish. We never close. It's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So that's why I'm always mindful when we do these type of presentations that, like, I'm in Bangkok right now, and when it's 8 in the morning here, it's 8 in the evening in the Midwest. And so it's a 24-hour day, 7-day-a-week venue. And some people celebrate New Year's on January 1st, and over here, New Year's was just a couple days ago. So many different cultures, many different people, but we have one thing in common. We are an equal opportunity provider. We offer our business model to people who want to be professional digital entrepreneurs. And I can promise you, when you combine the shopping, learning, and earning, philosophy that we have, you would be amazed on how excited people are, no matter where, at least myself, that I've been. So a lot more ground to cover. Obviously, Europe coming on board from the merger from the One Fashion Global team, new penetration in Latin America, including up-and-coming Brazil, and then Asia is about to be lit on fire. So listen, I appreciate you tuning in. It'll be a little tricky next week, but we'll work something out because I got to get on a plane and head back to the other side of the world. And I'm prideful to say that this is going to complete my 47th time either halfway or around the world and back again. So this is JR saying thanks for paying attention for this week's leadership call. Next week, we'll have a whole new series of topics to discuss. As always, I wish you all the success in the world. This is JR from Bangkok saying Sawadee Kap, Kap, thank you, and good night or good morning.